Hello, my name is Sharjul Khwaja, and in today's Subject Salon presentation, we will be discussing the life of one of the most renowned, sophisticated author, researcher, and academic, and a person who has had a profound impact in the field of organizational psychology, Dr. Lyman Porter. So, as far as Dr. Porter's early life goes, he was born in 1930 in Lafayette, Indiana. His father, Lyman C. Porter, was professor of biology at Purdue University. Now, a couple of personal statements to showcase the early life experience from Dr. Porter himself, a product of middle class, Middle West upbringing, and roots and basic character formation were anchored in my first 18 years growing up in a college town in Indiana. So by looking at these two statements, we can kind of start seeing how Dr. Porter might have ended up in a career related to academia. He first didn't come from an extremely poor family and could potentially afford to attend university, and his dad being an instructor, it's probably safe to assume that formal education was given high importance within his household. Then when we move on to his adult life, he attended Northwestern University, graduating in 1952. He continued his studies after that at Yale University, where he earned his PhD in psychology in 1956. In that same year, he joined as a faculty at University of California and rose to becoming a full tenured professor of industrial psychology. He then went on to serve as a dean of University of California, Irvine, from 1972 to 1983. He continued to teach, research, serve the campus even after becoming emeritus in 1992, and then passing away in July of 2015. And this goes without saying, there's a lot of gaps within this narrative that I just provided about Dr. Porter's life, which is filled with immense amount of achievements and contributions, such as authoring number of books, number of publications in the scientific journal, starting an extremely successful MBA program, and the list goes on. Now we move into the more interesting part of this presentation, which revolves around Dr. Porter's contribution. As I stated earlier, Dr. Porter's achievements are way too many to list out in a single 10-minute presentation. However, the one that I have decided to talk about is theory of motivation, or sometimes known as Porter and Lawler theory of motivation. So in a gist, the theory builds a connection between different factors such as effort, performance, rewards, and satisfaction, and how they're correlated with motivation. It's not an original theory, rather it's an expansion upon an already existing theory called Vroom's expectancy theory. What you see here is the more complex version, that is the updated theory, versus if you were to ever come across the older version, it's a bit more simplistic than this one. And as I go through these different factors, I will point out exactly where the new extensions or expansions come into play in this updated model. So before jumping into the factors of this theory, I want the audience to keep in mind the hypothesis: effort leads to performance, which leads to rewards, which then leads to satisfaction. Now, I'd like to point out here, as you can see, every factor is interconnected. So you can think of this model like a well-oiled machine where you have inputs, and based on the inputs, relative outputs are generated. So starting at number 3, effort, this factor is really referring to the energy that an individual is willing to put in. Now, an effort is based on effort is based on the moderators. First is the value of reward for the individual. This, by the way, was a factor highlighted in the initial theory as valence. And the second factor here is called the perceived effort reward probability, which pretty much refers to the idea of assessing the probability of achieving the rewards based on the amount of effort an individual needs to put in. For example, a question like, am I going to have to put in 80 hours of effort into this task this week, or will I be able to reap these same rewards with almost the same amount of probability if I can get away with putting in only, let's say, 60 hours of effort into this task this week. This factor number 2 is something new in this updated model that didn't exist in the older one. Then what we see here is really that based on the amount of effort put in, the relative performance is yielded. Now the performance and effort factor is connected by two additional factors, which are also new additions in this model. Number 4 refers to abilities and traits, which pretty much means the relative skill set an individual possesses to perform that task. And then number 5 is the perception of the role, meaning how much does an individual value that particular task in conjunction with how valuable it is considered by others, such as maybe that individual's peers. So number 4 and 5 serve as moderators to define how effective your effort is going to be in order for it to lead to a good performance. Then when we get to the performance accomplishments, which really refers to the results based on the quality of the effort that was put in. Number 8 is another extension that is new in this model. This factor revolves around the perception of the individual's self-performance evaluation and whether the reward equals or matches the expectations, because higher self-performance evaluation leads to higher expected rewards. And really the best way I can describe how that relates to satisfaction is by stating the saying that, the audience have probably heard this before: keep your expectations low and you will never be disappointed. The higher the self-evaluation of your performance, the higher expected reward, and when the reward does not match the expectation, it can lead to dissatisfaction. Now for number 7, it's describing the type of rewards that the performance will yield. Intrinsic reward refers to positive emotions that are derived from oneself. So anything that comes from within, think sense of pride, sense of accomplishments, or even sense of self-growth. And extrinsic value refers to rewards that are provided by others to you, and usually these are tangible and materialistic rewards. Think like firm paying bonus, pay raises, paid vacations, etc. Then we finally get into how this contribution relates to IHRM. So one of the ways IHRM leverages this theory of motivation is by ensuring the right person is getting staffed on the right task. Think about this from perspective of a firm that's operating globally and has clients all over the world. If you're working with a foreign client, would you want to staff a person who has the technical skill set as well as high cultural competence with that particular client's culture, or a person who just knows how to get the task done from technical standpoint? Obviously the former, because the cultural competence will serve as an important factor to retain great customer relationship due to relatable and likable soft skills. Another way this theory of motivation is being leveraged in relevance to IHRM is by really defining the reward systems within organizations. As you can already imagine, the factor of valence or value of reward is quite subjective and can differ due to personal preference. It differs even more across boundaries due to the changing needs of the people. So for example, in a country like Germany, where the government provides a public healthcare benefit to all of its citizens, a firm providing the healthcare benefit would not hold a lot of value, since the employees within that country will already have that benefit through government. Now, the same benefit in a country like US, where there's no public healthcare program provided by the government, this benefit might be considered very lucrative and hence have more value attached to it than for an employee in a country like Germany. And with that, I would like to conclude this presentation, and I hope that you enjoyed learning about one of the most aspirational leaders of our time in the field of organizational psychology. Thank you.